Hi, everyone. Today I want to talk about the news. The Treasury has told us they have decided that they are going to borrow $3 trillion through the end of second quarter, which is more than $1 trillion than they have ever borrowed in an entire fiscal year to this point. Some states have decided to start reopening a little bit. Let's see what that's going to look like. Roche Holdings got approval for their new antibody test from the FDA. They claim 100% accuracy and 99.8% specificity to the coronavirus. Also in Texas, a park ranger was pushed into a lake for trying to enforce social distancing guidelines. I think that really highlights some of the tension that's going on between state and local governments and the population right now. If buying something like the new Koenigsegg Mega GT car is appealing to you, definitely like and subscribe to this channel. And if it isn't appealing to you, like and subscribe anyway. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. All right, so first up is the Treasury. They've highlighted that they want to borrow a record $3 trillion in second quarter. If you scroll down, they're projecting $677 billion in July through September, which would be third quarter. Keep scrolling down here, we can see they had been planning to pay off a little bit of debt, and clearly that's not going to happen now. Around April 15th, they tend to pay down the debt a little bit more than they normally do because of the tax season. However, that's not going to happen this year. They estimate that they will have about $800 billion in cash at the end of June and at the end of September. That seems like a lot of cash to have on hand. That's because it is. It's an absolutely massive amount of cash, almost enough to buy Berkshire Hathaway 2 times over. But they feel like they need to carry it in cash despite the fact that they just borrowed it. However, the highlight here is that the borrowing estimate for April through June is larger than any other full fiscal year. So in 2009, which was the last financial crisis, they borrowed $1.8 trillion that year. The Treasury borrowed $1.28 trillion last year. But so far, just in second quarter, they're estimating that they're going to borrow $3 trillion to aid businesses and workers. So what does that really mean? It means that they're going to continue to print money as fast as they can get paper and ink into the building. In terms of financials, the 10-year note is still yielding 0.667% annually, which is down 1.284% over the past 4 months. Again, they're going to have to keep these rates low if they intend to pay the debt on these notes. I just can't see a world where these bonds are going to be yielding anything higher than they're yielding right now if we continue to borrow at this ridiculous rate. Otherwise, the takeaway is don't short the market, don't fight the Fed. If they can continue to print money, it's just going to inflate the price of the stock market. Up next is that some states are reopening, and California is taking small steps by Friday. You can see here, California is the largest contributor to the United States economy, and they will start loosening their stay-at-home rules by Friday. However, they are far behind Florida and Texas, which have opened their states much more. The governor of California has mentioned that they are going to allow curbside pickup at some retailers, and they will allow manufacturers to reopen. However, the Bay Area is going to maintain some pretty strict guidelines. And this is all under the urgency of Donald Trump to reopen. It says here that Donald Trump has pushed governors to reopen quickly. I would say he's been fairly neutral in letting governors make their own decisions on this. But this is the opinion of the article. And the article also highlights that there have been thousands of protesters across multiple states protesting that they reopen those states. Also, federal guidelines have expired at the end of April for social distancing. So that really puts it in the hands of governors to make decisions what they're going to do with their specific states. It says here, due to the Roni situation, the economy contracted 4.8% in Q1, and currently they expect a bounce back in Q3. And I think that's the main highlight for this article. If these states are going to open a little sooner than we thought, and these timelines are not going to be pushed back, then we should expect to see a stronger Q3 than was previously thought. Q2 is definitely going to see a further contraction from Q1, as states have essentially been shut down for all of April and some of May, which are the first 2 months of Q2. However, if we can get into Q3 mostly open, then we could see a stronger recovery from this situation than was previously thought. Then it just goes on to highlight some of the dates. Florida, May 4th, so they've already opened, loosening some of those restrictions. Missouri, May 4th, Nebraska, May 4th, Kansas, May 4th. A lot of these states in the middle of the country have already begun to reopen, which does give a positive outlook for Q3. So this continues to support my bull theory that we have already seen the lows in March and that we will not retest those lows this year. Next up, Roche gets emergency approval for Rona antibody tests as FDA vows closer oversight. Roche is a Swedish biotech company, and they advertise a 100% accuracy rate against the coronavirus and a 99.8% specificity to this strain of the coronavirus, which is much better than the other antibody tests on the market, which have been giving pretty consistent false positives. And they also suggest that they can make millions of this test this month and that they can ramp up to 100 million a month later this year. However, the Food and Drug Administration says that they are going to have more strict oversight because of the false positive rates. And that's why this test is more likely to be put into effect because they're advertising only one false positive per 500 tests, which is much better, and they can run up to 300 tests per hour. The article goes on to say that 200 antibody tests have been put on the market. Only 12 of those are currently approved by the FDA. These companies are taking advantage of fear in the population to sell these antibody tests. So the reason that this test is important is because if we can do widespread, very accurate antibody tests, then we can have a much better picture of how much of the population has already been exposed to the coronavirus and what is the likelihood of a second wave. And that'll give us much better data for continuing to stay open and not experiencing a second wave followed by another shutdown. Next, a Texas park ranger was pushed into a lake while asking visitors to socially distance. The Lone Star Estate, which has allowed people to visit parks, hunt, jog, fish, etc., as long as they practice social distancing. Apparently, not everyone is following that. A 25-year-old was part of a group who was drinking and smoking around 5 p.m., and he pushed the officer, and now he will be charged with attempted assault on a public servant. I'll go ahead and play that for you.
I got you, man. Got you.
So based on that clip, it just looks like a bunch of hooligans getting into some shenanigans. But this sentence really sums it up here. The officer just out here doing his jobs while more Texans disobey the rules. It even goes on to say that they've closed some of the parks due to overcrowding, which ironically will create more overcrowding because now you're pushing more people into whatever parks remain open. Moving on, they have some pictures of some protests. You can see here at the National Mall, there's thousands of people crammed in here watching the Blue Angels fly over. Going down to Huntington Beach, California, these people are much closer together than 6 feet. And then moving on to Miami Beach, they actually had to close South Point Park because too many people, too big of crowds, not enough social distancing, and people didn't have their masks on. So because of that, they've chosen to close these public spaces. It does say here that these stay-at-home orders have been effective in reducing the outbreak. However, you have to weigh that with the sanity of the American people, and you can really only keep Americans locked up for so long before they stop listening to you regardless. And there's too many people to manage with any kind of police force, so governors are going to have to make a decision how they're going to do that, and it seems like most of them have started reopening their states to some degree, as I've already mentioned. All right, so what are the takeaways? The Treasury is willing to borrow an unprecedented amount of money, more money in one quarter than it has in any year in history. So don't short the market. Don't fight the Fed. The Fed is going to continue to prop up these businesses, whether it be through loans or giving money to individuals to buy their products. The Fed is going to prop up these businesses. Number two, some of these states with large GDPs are open, while some states like California are opening slowly, and New York is opening even slower than them. But a lot of states are opening. So in my opinion, we'll see a better Q3 than expected. Number three, Roche and their more accurate antibody test reduces the likelihood of going back into lockdown if we know that herd immunity has taken effect, then it makes no sense to go back into lockdown, which again is more positive for the economy. And then number 4 could go either way. Americans are tired of being in their house, and you can view this as a bad thing or a good thing. It's good for the economy because if they go out and they do things and they spend money, that's going to stimulate the economy. It is bad that if they ignore some of the guidelines, there's potential for a second wave of the coronavirus, which would be extremely traumatic for the economy. So take that for what you will. And with that, let's get to the jelly. So today's jelly is a little bit of a change of pace. Came out on the 15th of April, but it's new to me. Apple is currently charging $700 for a set of wheels for its high-end Mac Pro computer tower, which is the same price as an iPhone 11. The article goes on to say that the option is $700 and that the overall machine has a maximum price of $50,000 and that it's designed for professionals. Here's a little picture of what they look like. They look like regular wheels, but they are custom designed for the Mac Pro to make it easier to move around. They say the wheels are good for people who have to move their computer around a lot. But if I had a $50,000 computer, I probably wouldn't be moving it around a lot. And in case you couldn't tell, this jelly is not actually something I really enjoyed outside of the markets. It's just something I thought was pretty interesting and quite surprising. It's amazing to me that Apple users will continue to pay prices like this for products that are not really any better than much cheaper options. So if you made it this far, you must enjoy content like this. So go ahead and like and subscribe and have a great day.